Hello there. Welcome back to Tuck and Cash. I hope you're all doing well. Today I have my special guest, fellow wingmate, Flan from Winging It here to talk about Wingspan with me. How are you doing, Flan?
Hello, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on again. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are we going to talk about today is Wingspan Oceania. So, with the new board, new nectar, we're now pushing like over 280 birds in the game now. So, from my experience, some of the birds from the base game and European expansion, they just don't play the same with the new board. So, in this video, we're going to talk about what are some of the birds that maybe doesn't fare as well in Oceania anymore. All right, to kickstart the list, I think the first birds that jump to mind are birds like American crow and fish crow. I mean, they were just so strong in the base game, you're always so happy to get them, but I don't feel the same anymore in Oceania because of the nerf to the number of eggs you can get in the grassland. How do you feel about this, Flan?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a shame. Like you say, these are kind of birds where if they're in a starting hand, I think in the base game European expansion, if you're playing on those base boards, you're gonna want to keep these, go for that grass and strategy, lay eggs, use this to get food. But
Right.
like you say, just not getting as many eggs. I think actually it can be really difficult to justify discarding eggs to get food. Of course, you can gain nectar, but yeah, I think it's a lot harder to just go with this sort of approach in the grasslands and rely on this as a sole food source. Yeah, definitely tricky and definitely not as good as it was before on the baseboards.
Yeah, especially with the Oceania expansion, there's a lot more focus on playing more birds, playing birds that are
Mm,
expensive. With the base
yeah,
game strategy of just gaining one food from the grassland, it's just not that sustainable anymore.
definitely not. Yeah, it's just tricky and. I think in general in Oceania, like you say, you want to be playing big point birds, these expensive birds, getting one food a turn with something like an American crow. Definitely slows that down.
Yeah,
And definitely makes things a little bit more tricky there.
yeah. What else do you have in mind, Flan?
Well, I think I'm going to stick on a similar theme here to the American Crow. We talk about going in the grasslands in the base game, and using that as a way of maybe getting food and being able to ignore the forest and just run in the grasslands and get food. So I think one really that comes to mind for me is a bird like the spotted towhee.
Oh
So
wow. Yeah.
yeah, this is a bit of a favorite I know of yours and definitely of mine.
Yes.
In the baseboards, of course, play that in the grass and lay some eggs and start getting food. Feeds in this case. So yeah, could be a really great way of starting a grasslands engine and going from there. But again, as with the crows, just getting that one food and in this case, it's even worse, I think, because you're limited to the seeds and you're not getting nectar. And we know how big of a part nectar plays in the Oceania expansion. So, yeah, there's plenty of other birds I think that fit in this category. Eastern phoebe is another one that comes to mind. There's plenty of those birds as well in the forest that only gain a specific type of food. So, yeah, I don't know how you feel about these, but for me, definitely not quite as good here with the Oceania boards.
Right. I mean, it definitely saddened me to say this, but it's so true. Like the towhee
Mm,
used to be like my favorite, like definitely top three birds for me from the base game. But now, yeah, like you say, not being able to get nectar and then
hmm.
itself being a 0 point bird. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big problem as well. Like that's just not too much room in Oceania for low point birds. But I guess one thing is worth pointing out is that even those like birds like towhee and phoebe are not as viable in the grassland, but they could still be a good option in the forest in the beginning of the game. It's just very different use than base game for sure.
Yeah, I think they can work, and I think like you say, obviously Tauhi can go in the forest here, and I think in the baseboard that would almost be unthinkable. I think it
Yeah,
would in almost all situations be going in the grass, and so you can lay eggs and start getting food.
yeah.
So I think it does work, but I think it's definitely not ideal, and it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely not. one of those top tier birds that we
No.
always talk about for the baseboards. These are the kind of birds you look for in a starting hand. I think if I see a towhee in a starting hand, I think it's very rare that I'm going to be keeping it these
Wow.
days. So
Yeah.
definitely a bit of a fall from grace, and definitely a shame because this is a bird that I like so much. And
Yeah.
yeah, just I don't think it gets quite so much use here now with the Oceania boards.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite unfortunate, but we'll see where the future
Yeah,
brings. There might be future expansion that bring the Tauhi back. So we can hope.
hopefully, yeah, we could dream. We could dream.
Yeah. Well, the next group of birds that I want to talk about are the hunters from the base game, especially the dice rolling hunter. They were already not that great in base game, but a lot of time they're still good points to food ratio, so you still play them as a kind of a big point birds, but with the introduction of Oceania, they're just so much more predator with much better
Mm.
hunting power and more consistent hunting power. Yeah, I think they're just not as good anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you make about efficiency of food, and I mean a bird like the snowy egret. I think that's one where in the base game or on the base boards in general, I wouldn't be too disappointed to have this. Getting 4 points for a single food, it's not bad, and the hunting power is not great. But I think in the context certainly of just base game and European expansion, it's not terrible, and it can be a decent way of getting points. But there are just so many better hunting powers
Mm-hmm.
have been introduced with the Oceanic expansion, and when you start to look at these kind of birds like the snowy egret within that context of hunting powers in general, it's very, very weak, and yeah, not the kind of bird that I'd be super excited about seeing. I can just think of so many better birds introduced in the Oceanic expansion that I'd rather see, that are just going to score more points just by playing them, but then have that better power as well,
Yeah,
as the game goes on.
absolutely.
All right, back over to me. And my next type of bird on this list is, again, it's going to be a category of birds.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be talking about tuck and draw birds. So
Yeah.
this might be a bit of a controversial one, but I think these powers, as amazing as they were in the base game, I think especially the ones that go in the grasslands, I think they have got weaker here in the
Mm-hmm.
Oceania expansion. So just again, in this wider context of Oceania boards, weaker grasslands, and the game is less about engine building and more about playing big point birds and trying to score points through that. I think as much as it might have been a welcome sight in a starting hand in the base boards, play bird like the purple martin, start laying eggs, start cycling cards. I just think that doesn't work quite so well as a strategy here, on the Oceania boards. So can still work and maybe better even in the wetlands now, but yeah, definitely not quite as good. And I'm definitely less excited to see these in a starting hand now.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a category of bird that's worth mentioning, and that was
Mm,
definitely a surprise to me too when I transitioned to playing Oceania. Like the tuck and draw power just doesn't hit the same anymore with
no.
with the new board. Like you say, it's not as overpowering in the grassland as it felt in the base game.
Hmm.
If your opponent simply has a ping power that gain points when you tuck and draw, like
Right.
it's very easy to counter that. And then even though the tuck and draw power feel a little bit weaker, but I kind of like it because I feel like it's not as game or meta determining as before. I feel like in base game, if you get one of this power, you straight just go for a grassland engine here. But now
Yeah.
with the Oceania board, it opened up a lot more opportunities to play, for example, in the forest or, yeah, in other form to gain points and make your turn more efficient.
Yeah. I think, like you say, seeing one of these birds, I think particularly something like a house finch, if this was in a starting hand, in the base game, European expansion, if I'm playing baseboards, I play that in the grasslands, I'm going to start laying eggs. I think now it's potentially better in those other habitats.
Yeah.
So this kind of power in general probably isn't completely weaker, but I think more specifically in that context of going for the grasslands tuck and draw, particularly birds like the purple martin that we looked at before, those are definitely weaker, and yeah, it just maybe requires a little bit more thought and a little bit more careful thinking when using this kind of power on the Oceania mats.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that might be a wrap for this video here. Really good discussion, lots of good points. And I forgot to mention that, we're mainly focusing on the discussion on the base game, birds. So in the future, we might do one for the other expansion, like European expansion. And Fran and I also have made a video that talk about birds that actually got better with the Oceania boards. So if you're interested in that, make sure you head over to Winging It as well. With that, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here, Flan, and I'll see you on next time.